My name is Adam, and today I want to tell you about something that nearly destroyed my marriage but also changed the way I see relationships forever. My wife, Clara, and I had been together for 6 years. Like most couples, we had our share of good times and bad, but over the years, I started noticing something that I should have recognized a lot sooner. Every time Clara didn't get what she wanted, she would shut down emotionally. She wouldn't argue. She wouldn't explain. She wouldn't say what was bothering her. Instead, she would withdraw from me, from conversations, from intimacy. At first, I thought she just needed space. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe she was in a bad mood. But the more I paid attention, the more I realized it wasn't random. It was calculated. Whenever I said no to something she wanted, whether it was a favor, a decision, or even a simple request, suddenly she wasn't in the mood, and it wasn't just about physical intimacy. She became distant, uninterested, cold, and like an idiot, I fell for it every time. I hated the tension in our home, so I would try to fix things. I would apologize first. I would reassure her, and sometimes, just to get things back to normal, I would give in and let her have her way. And guess what? It worked. The moment she got what she wanted, she was back to normal. Affectionate, loving, playful, like nothing ever happened. Looking back, I see it clearly. Clara knew exactly what she was doing. She had figured out how to control me without ever having to raise her voice or argue. She made me feel like I was losing her. And for the longest time, I believed that if I just kept her happy, we would be happy. But this time was different. The moment everything changed started with something small, something that shouldn't have been a big deal. A week before Clara's birthday, she started dropping hints about a luxury spa resort she wanted us to go to together. At first, it was casual, just a passing comment here and there. "Babe, did you see that new resort that just opened? They have an amazing spa." Or, "Sophia went last week, and she said it was the best experience of her life." I nodded along, not thinking much of it. Clara liked nice things, and that was fine. But as the days passed, she kept bringing it up again and again. It was no longer just casual conversation. She was planting the idea in my head, preparing for the moment she would expect me to agree. I should have known what was coming. One night, we were watching TV, and she casually pulled out her phone and slid it toward me. "Babe, look at this place. It's perfect. We should book it." I glanced at the screen. Luxury 5-star resort, full-service spa, all-inclusive package, weekend getaway. Then I saw the price, $1,000 per person. I felt a knot form in my stomach. We had other expenses to take care of: bills, car maintenance, groceries, and a few things that had already stretched our budget thin. I cleared my throat, choosing my words carefully. "Clara, I don't think we can afford this right now." The room fell silent. Her lips pressed together, and the brightness in her eyes dimmed. It was a small change, but I caught it instantly, that subtle shift in her expression. The same shift I had seen countless times before. It was like flipping a switch. "So you're saying no?" Her voice was flat, emotionless. I sighed, keeping my tone neutral. "I'm saying let's think about it. Maybe later in the year." I wasn't shutting her down completely. I was trying to be reasonable, but I already knew it wouldn't matter. Clara let out a short laugh, but there was nothing amused about it. She leaned back, crossed her arms, and muttered under her breath, "Right. Maybe later. That's what you always say." And just like that, I could feel the shift happening. That cold distance creeping in. That silent punishment about to begin. We finished the episode we were watching, but she didn't say another word. Not even a glance in my direction. She wasn't arguing. She wasn't explaining. She was just shutting down. I had seen this so many times before. When Clara didn't get her way, she didn't yell. She didn't argue. She simply disappeared. Emotionally, physically, intimately. And it always worked. Because when she did this, I would bend over backward to bring her back. I would apologize for upsetting her, even if I hadn't done anything wrong. I would try to make it up to her, just to avoid the uncomfortable silence, the cold stares, the nights spent in a bed that suddenly felt miles wide. But not this time. Later that night, I got into bed next to her. Normally, we had our little nighttime routine. I'd slide my arm around her waist, she'd press against me, and we'd fall asleep like that. It was second nature. But tonight, The second my arm brushed against her, she pulled away. "Not tonight," she muttered, facing the other way. I blinked, caught off guard. I hadn't even initiated anything intimate. I had just touched her. A simple, absent-minded gesture, the same way I had every night for years. But tonight, it was different. And that's when I knew. This was punishment. Not a bad mood, not stress, not exhaustion. This was calculated silence because I hadn't given her what she wanted. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. How many times had I fallen for this? How many times had I apologized for things that weren't my fault? How many times had I bought something, changed my decision, or caved in just to end the Cold War in my own home? Too many times, and I wasn't going to do it again. That night, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to beg for my wife's affection. I wasn't going to break first. If she wanted to play this game, she was going to play alone. Instead of chasing after her, I did something different. I focused on myself. For years, my energy had been tied up in keeping the peace. Every time Clara got distant, I would scramble to fix it, to get things back to normal, to make sure she wasn't upset with me. It was like I had been trained to believe that her approval determined the atmosphere of our home. But this time, I refused to play the game. I stopped apologizing for things that weren't my fault. I stopped waiting for permission to feel okay. And instead, I started doing things that actually made me happy. I dusted off my old gym bag, the one I hadn't touched in years, and started working out again. I wasn't doing it to impress Clara or to make a point. I was doing it for me. I liked the way it made me feel, like I was in control of my own body again. The soreness in my muscles reminded me that I was pushing myself, making progress. I started playing basketball with some of my coworkers after work. Nothing serious, just a weekly game at a local court. But it felt good to be out there, moving, laughing, feeling engaged with something outside of my marriage. And then there was photography. Before I met Clara, I used to take my camera everywhere. I loved capturing things, small moments, interesting faces, the way light hit a city street at just the right angle. But over the years, I had let that passion slip away. Life got busy and I convinced myself it wasn't important. Now, for the first time in years, I pulled my camera out of the closet, wiped off the dust, and started shooting again. I took photos of everything. Street photography, sunsets, even random textures on walls. It felt like I was reconnecting with a part of myself I had buried. And for the first time in a long time, I felt good. I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't analyzing every little shift in Clara's mood. I wasn't waiting for her to forgive me or for things to magically return to normal. If she wanted to be distant, that was fine. I wasn't chasing her anymore. And that's when something interesting happened. Clara expected me to fold, to apologize, to beg for her affection like I always did. But when I didn't, she noticed. At first, she acted indifferent, but I could tell she was watching. When I left for the gym or stepped out with my camera, her eyes followed me. She wasn't used to this version of me, the one who didn't need her approval. Then came the night that changed everything. Mia, one of Clara's newer friends, came over for dinner. When we had those kinds of dinners, I usually stayed in the background while Clara dominated the conversation. But tonight, I was engaged, confident, present. Mia noticed. "So, Adam," she said, leaning in slightly, "Clara told me you're into photography. You should show me your work sometime." I smiled. "I'd love to." It was subtle, but the energy shifted. Mia was flirting, and I flirted back. Nothing over the top, just enough to keep things interesting. Enough to make Clara notice. Her posture stiffened every time Mia laughed at my jokes. Her expression darkened when Mia smiled a little too long. But she really felt it when Mia, smirking at the door, said, "Adam, you're way more fun than I expected. I see why Clara married you." I saw Clara's face change. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't the center of my world. And now she felt something she hadn't in years. Competition. The next morning, something strange happened. Clara woke up before me. That alone was unusual, but what really caught me off guard was the smell coming from the kitchen. When I walked in, she was cooking breakfast, something she hadn't done in years. She turned and smiled as she placed a plate in front of me. "I made your favorite." I raised an eyebrow. "Thanks." I didn't act overly excited. I didn't reward her effort. I just ate. Over the next few days, she kept trying. She started wearing makeup again, even when we were just at home. She asked about my day, laughing at things she normally ignored. She started touching me more. Light touches on my arm, playful nudges. She was testing the waters, trying to see if she still had control over me. But now, I was playing her game. I didn't give her cold silence, but I didn't seek her out either. I didn't initiate affection. If she touched me, I barely reacted. If she flirted, I responded politely but never pushed for more. At night, I turned over in bed before she had the chance to do it first. I wasn't being cruel, I was just letting her feel what I had felt all those times before, and I could tell it was driving her crazy. I was sitting in the living room, casually scrolling through my phone, when she walked in and stood in front of me. At first, she didn't say anything, just shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Then, after a long pause, she sighed. I feel like we're not as close anymore. I looked up at her, waiting. I wasn't going to fill the silence for her. She hesitated, then spoke again. Can we talk? I set my phone down and nodded. Yeah, let's talk. She swallowed hard, like she was struggling to get the words out. I miss how we used to be. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Clara, I love you, but I'm done with the games. Her eyes widened slightly, her lips parting like she wanted to protest. Games? Yeah, I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. The silent treatment, the emotional distance whenever I don't give you what you want. That's not love, Clara. That's control. She opened her mouth again, then closed it. No denial, no argument, just silence. And for the first time, I saw it. Realization hitting her. She had always been so sure of her power in our relationship, so certain that she could pull away and I would always be the one to fix things. But this time I hadn't. This time, I had let the distance stay, and now she was the one feeling it. For a long time, neither of us spoke. She lowered her gaze, her fingers twisting together in her lap. Whatever she had expected from this conversation, it wasn't this. It wasn't me standing my ground. And I could see it, the first crack in the pattern she had built. From that day on, things changed. It wasn't an instant transformation, but I felt the shift. Clara stopped using affection as a weapon. The cold silences, the calculated distance, the way she withdrew when things didn't go her way. It all faded. Not because I demanded it, but because she realized it no longer worked. She also stopped rolling her eyes when I disagreed with her. Before, any pushback from me was met with irritation, like I was challenging her authority. Now she actually listened. We still had our opinions, but she no longer treated my no like a personal attack. And me? I learned that I deserved love without conditions. For the first time in years, I had a voice in my own relationship. I wasn't tiptoeing around her moods, waiting for approval or living in fear of the next cold shoulder. I set a boundary, and because I stood by it, our marriage became stronger than ever. Not every relationship works this way. Not everyone is willing to change. But if your partner holds love and affection over your head like a reward, ask yourself, is this really love, or is it control? Because real love isn't conditional. It doesn't punish. It doesn't make you beg. Real love is given freely. And for the first time in a long time, I finally knew what that felt like. Thank you for watching. My name's Stanley. The night I thought everything was finally falling into place started like any other Friday. Months of saving, planning, worrying about getting everything right. It all led to this one night. I was ready to propose to Julia. We'd been together a little over 2 years. From the start, things just clicked between us. She was sharp, funny, and grounded in a way that made me think I could build a real life with her. I never second-guessed that once. I wanted the proposal to feel like us. Simple, real, solid. It had to be special but not flashy. I chose Matteo's, the Italian restaurant where we had our first real date. Cozy, quiet, tucked away, just like us. I got Marcus, my best friend, to help book the private room. Julia's cousin Haley offered to decorate a little. Candles, some flowers, nothing over the top. The ring was sitting heavy in my jacket pocket as we got ready to leave. A plain silver band with a single diamond. Clean, timeless. The kind of thing she always said she loved. We left the apartment just before 8. Julia came down the stairs in a green dress I'd never seen before. She smiled at me, and for a second, I forgot every worry. She still did that to me, made everything else shut off. We talked a little on the way over, but something was off. She kept checking her phone, quick glances, fingers typing fast and sliding the screen away when she saw me looking. I asked, "Everything good?" She tucked her hair behind her ear and smiled too quickly. "Yeah, just work being annoying. Nothing big." I believed her, or maybe I wanted to believe her. We pulled up to the restaurant. I texted Marcus, "We're here." He texted back, "Everything's ready." I touched the box in my pocket again. My heart was steady. My hands, for once, weren't shaking. This was it. The night my life would change forever. And it did, just not the way I expected. We walked into Mateo's and the place was dimly lit, just like I asked. Soft music played. The candles flickered. The private room was ready. Marcus and Haley were tucked out of sight, hiding behind one of the partition walls, waiting for the signal. Julia looked around, smiling a little. "Wow," she said. "This is nice." Nice. Not amazing, not breathtaking, just nice. I brushed it off. I had one shot at this and I wasn't going to let nerves get to me. We sat down, menus untouched. The waiter brought out 2 glasses of wine without asking, another small detail I'd arranged. Julia's phone buzzed against the table. She snatched it up quickly. Too quickly. I caught the name on the screen before she flipped it over. Lucas. Not Mom or Haley or even one of her co-workers. Just Lucas. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep it light. She laughed, but it sounded tight. "Oh, it's just Lucas from my running club. He's probably asking about weekend plans. No big deal." I nodded slowly. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But something in my gut twisted hard. Then Marcus texted me. "Ready?" I texted back. "1 sec." Julia kept talking about some show she started watching, but her eyes kept flickering down to her phone every few seconds. Her mind wasn't here. I could have stopped everything right then. Waited. Asked her directly. Instead, I took a deep breath, got up from my seat and pulled the ring box from my pocket. Julia's eyes widened. She blinked fast like she was processing what was happening. I got down on one knee. "Julia Martin, I love you more than I can explain. Will you marry me?" For a second, everything went completely still. Even the soft music seemed to disappear. Her hands flew to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes. She nodded, fast, almost frantic. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Stanley." Marcus and Haley clapped quietly from the corner. Haley wiped her eyes. Marcus gave me a thumbs up. I kissed her hand, slid the ring onto her finger, and for a second, I felt like I could breathe again. But under the table, her phone buzzed again, and I wasn't fast enough to miss the new message lighting up her screen. "Miss you. Can't wait to see you." I didn't react, not right away. I slipped back into my chair, heart hammering in my chest, mind spinning. Julia wiped her tears and laughed nervously, flashing the ring toward Haley. Across the room, Marcus and Haley looked on, smiling like everything was perfect. Except I wasn't really there anymore. I was watching it all from a distance, like it was happening to someone else. She tucked her phone away, caught me looking, and smiled a little too wide. "You okay?" she asked, almost like she already knew I wasn't. "Yeah," I said. My voice didn't even sound like mine. Dinner went on. Plates came and went. Toasts were made. I heard Marcus say something about planning the bachelor party, and Haley talked about dress shopping. Julia kept glancing at her phone under the table. She wasn't even hiding it now. When dessert came, she leaned in close, kissed my cheek, and said, "Be right back, babe. Just need a second." I watched her disappear toward the back hallway. Marcus leaned over. "Man, you crushed it," he said, grinning. "She looked so happy." I nodded, but it felt mechanical. I waited 30 seconds, then stood up, followed her. I found her by the back door, standing half in shadow, phone pressed tight to her ear. "I can't talk long, Lucas," she was saying, her voice low and urgent. "He proposed." I said yes. "I know. It's crazy." "No. I didn't tell him about us. He still thinks everything's fine. Just give me a little time, okay? I'll figure it out." A beat of silence. Then her voice dropped even lower, softer, almost tender. I miss you too. I can't wait to see you later. My stomach twisted. I stepped forward, making the floor creak under my shoes. Julia spun around. The color drained from her face when she saw me standing there. Stanley, she started, stuffing her phone into her purse like a kid caught stealing. I held up a hand. Didn't want to hear the lies yet. Who's Lucas? I asked, my voice sharp but steady. She opened her mouth, closed it, swallowed. Stanley, it's not what you think, she said quickly. It's complicated. I stared at her, waiting. She stepped closer, reaching for me. Please, let's just go back inside. We can talk about this later. Later. Always later. I took a long breath. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't break. We're done here, I said quietly. You can stay and finish the show if you want. I'm leaving. And then I turned and walked away. Julia ran after me, her heels clicking hard against the tile. Stanley, wait, she hissed. I didn't stop. I shoved open the front door of the restaurant, the night air hitting me hard, waking me up. She caught up outside, grabbing my arm. Stanley, please just listen to me, she said, breathless. I shook her off, turned to face her. You said yes to me, I said, my voice steady. Then you told him you miss him. She froze. You lied to my face, I added. What part of that am I getting wrong? She blinked fast, tears starting to fill her eyes. I didn't plan this, she said. I was confused. Lucas, it's nothing serious. It's stupid. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything? I repeated. You were sneaking around outside during your engagement dinner. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Behind her, Marcus and Haley pushed out the door, looking confused. Marcus caught my eye, saw my face, and knew instantly something was wrong. You lied to me, I said, and you're still lying. Julia's face crumpled. Please don't do this here, she whispered. I laughed once, short and ugly. You already did. Julia tried again. I love you, Stanley. I do. I was just scared. That's all. It's a mistake. I can fix it. You don't fix love with backup plans, I said, stepping back. For a second, nobody moved. The street was dead quiet except for our breathing. I pulled the empty ring box out of my pocket, the one I'd carried around for months, the one that used to mean forever. I pressed it into her hand. Here, I said. You're going to need it for someone else. Her hand closed around it automatically. She stared down at it, mouth open, shock written all over her face. I didn't give her a chance to say anything else. I turned and walked to my car, got in, drove away, and I didn't look back once. When I got home, I locked the door behind me. Then I grabbed a chair and jammed it under the handle. Something solid, something that would keep her out. I wasn't going to listen to apologies. I wasn't going to let her walk back in like nothing happened. I dropped the keys on the counter, sat on the couch, and stared at the wall. It was supposed to be one of the best nights of my life. Instead, it felt like somebody had pulled the ground out from under me. Julia came after a while. I heard her knocking, first soft, then harder, calling my name. I didn't move. After a few minutes, the knocking stopped. I waited, listening to the silence press against the door. Eventually, I heard her footsteps fade away. Julia kept texting all night. Apologies, please, promises. I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Please, let's talk. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to hear more lies. Not yet. The next morning, I called a locksmith. Had the locks changed before noon. New keys, new rules. She wasn't getting back in. 3 days passed. I went to work, hit the gym, pretended like everything was fine. Then I cleared out the apartment, packed up every piece of her, the clothes, the books, the framed pictures she loved to hang everywhere. I boxed it all up and dropped it at her parents' house. No note, no warning, just a clean cut. Julia kept trying, calling, texting, even showing up at my office once. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a response. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. On Thursday night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut told me to answer. Hello? The guy on the other end cleared his throat. He sounded young, nervous. Is this Stanley? He asked. Yeah. Who's this? It's Lucas, he said. I stood up, heart already pounding. What do you want? He hesitated. I thought you should know. I didn't know she was with someone. Julia told me she was single. I didn't say anything. Just listened. We met at the gym like 4 months ago, he continued. She said she was seeing someone casually, but it wasn't serious. I didn't even know your name until last week. Silence stretched between us. I ended it when I found out, he said. I told her it wasn't right. She said she didn't want to lose either of us. My hands clenched into fists. Look, man, Lucas said, voice low. I'm sorry. If I'd known, I would have stayed away. I swallowed hard. Thanks for telling me, I said. Then I hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. 4 months. While I was planning a future with her, she was hedging her bets. Still unsure. Still shopping around. I thought about all the nights she said she was working late. All the weekends she said she needed me time. The signs had been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. And now there was no more pretending. No more excuses. No more maybes. I finally knew exactly who Julia was. And it wasn't the woman I thought I loved. 2 days after Lucas called, Julia showed up at my apartment. I heard the knock and didn't move. Thought about ignoring it. But then I thought, no, better to end it properly. I opened the door. Julia stood there, no makeup, hoodie and jeans, looking smaller than I remembered. Her eyes were red like she hadn't slept. Stanley, she said, voice hoarse. Can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe, crossed my arms. Talk, I said. She swallowed hard. I messed up. I know I did. But you have to believe me. I never wanted to hurt you. I was scared. I didn't know if I was ready, and Lucas was just a distraction. I didn't say anything. She kept going, words spilling out faster. When you proposed, I realized how much I loved you. I panicked because I thought I didn't deserve it. But I do love you. I do. I studied her. 2 weeks ago, I would have fallen for every word. Now I just saw a woman desperate not to lose something she thought she had locked down. You don't love me, I said calmly. You loved having options. Tears welled up again. She reached for my hand. I stepped back. I'm not your backup plan, Julia, I said. I'm not the guy you settle for because the other one didn't work out. She shook her head. You're not. You're the one I want. You had months to figure that out, I said. You didn't. She wiped her face, breathing hard, scrambling for something else to say. I looked at her, really looked, and felt nothing. No anger, no heartbreak, just a clean, sharp certainty. We're done, I said. Take care of yourself. I stepped back inside and closed the door. She didn't knock again. I watched her disappear down the street, and for the first time it didn't hurt. It was strange, how fast you can erase someone when you realize they never really saw you in the first place. Marcus kept checking in. Haley texted once to say she was sorry for what happened. I appreciated it, but I didn't need apologies. I needed space. So I gave it to myself. Work got easier. Sleep came back. I started running again. Picked up old hobbies I'd let slide when I was too busy planning a life with someone else. One night, I was out with some friends, laughing harder than I had in months, when my phone buzzed. Julia. One message. Can we talk? I stared at it for a second. Not because I was tempted. I wasn't. I smiled, blocked her number, put the phone back in my pocket. And that was it. No drama, no second chances, no long emotional monologues. Just done. The funny thing is, when you're in it, betrayal feels like it'll crush you, like you'll never get past it. But the truth is, betrayal's a gift. It strips away every lie you're telling yourself. It shows you exactly who someone is and who you are without them. If she hadn't shown me her true self, I would have spent years building a life on quicksand. Now I'm building something real. Something just for me. And that's the life I should have been fighting for all along. Thank you for watching. I said one evening, setting down 2 mugs of tea on the kitchen table. "Things between us have felt off lately. You've been distant." She looked up from her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen. "What are you talking about, Nick? I'm just busy. Work's been insane." "Work," I repeated. "It's always work. But I can't even remember the last time we really talked. We'd been married for 7 years, and those early days felt like a lifetime ago. Back then, everything was simple. We couldn't get enough of each other. But over time, the magic faded. Life got in the way. Work, bills, routines. It's not like we stopped loving each other, at least I didn't think so, but something had shifted. Lately, Helen seemed more like a stranger than my wife. She was always distracted, always busy with something that didn't involve me. I wasn't ready to let us slip away. I hoped a change of scenery, a break from the endless loop of work and distractions, could bring us back to where we used to be. Back to us. I took a deep breath, setting my mug down and looking at her. "I booked us a trip, the Caribbean, just you and me." My voice was tinged with hope, wishing she'd feel the same way I did. She blinked, her expression unreadable. For a moment I thought she might actually smile, but instead she put her phone down and sighed. "I don't know, Nick. Things are hectic right now. Maybe this isn't the best time." "It's the perfect time," I insisted. "We need this." She hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line, but eventually she nodded. "Okay, fine. The Caribbean. Let's go." I should have noticed the way her eyes darted back to her phone as soon as the conversation ended, but I was too relieved. I thought I'd just managed to reconnect with her, to fix what felt like a growing rift. The day we arrived at the resort, everything seemed fine, on the surface. The weather was perfect, the water a sparkling turquoise, and the air warm with a soft breeze. But Helen, she wasn't there. Not really. We stood on the balcony of our suite, the ocean stretching out before us. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" I asked, wrapping my arm around her waist. "Yeah," she said, but she was already pulling out her phone. "I just need to check something real quick." "Helen," I said, my tone sharper than I intended. "Can't you leave that thing alone for 1 minute?" She glanced at me, startled. "It's just a quick text, Nick. Relax." She turned away, typing furiously, her face illuminated by the glow of the screen. I wanted to brush it off, tell myself I was being paranoid, but the sinking feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. By the 3rd day, her behavior was impossible to ignore. She was always stepping out for some air or checking out the spa. Her phone never left her side, and she was constantly smiling at it, like it held some private joke I wasn't in on. That night, I confronted her. "Helen, what's going on?" "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone defensive, her eyes flicking toward her phone on the nightstand. "You've been glued to your phone this whole trip. You disappear for hours. I thought this was supposed to be about us." She crossed her arms, a wall of irritation going up. "I'm just keeping up with work. You know things don't stop just because we're on vacation." "Work?" I repeated, my voice tinged with disbelief. "Are you seriously telling me that you're on work calls and emails during this trip? The one I planned to help us reconnect?" Her lips tightened for a second before she shrugged. "Yeah, Nick. Calls, messages, emails. You know how demanding my job is." I stared at her, trying to keep my voice calm. "You're on your phone constantly, laughing, smiling like it's something fun, not work. I'm not stupid, Helen." Her face flushed for just a moment, like a shadow crossing a window, but she quickly snapped back. "You're overreacting. I can't believe you're turning this into an issue. This trip was supposed to be relaxing, but you're making it stressful." I wanted to believe her. God, how badly I wanted to. But the pieces were starting to come together, and they painted a picture I didn't want to see. The next morning, she claimed she was going for a yoga session by the beach. Something about her excuse didn't sit right with me, so I decided to follow her. I felt like an idiot, sneaking around the resort like a private detective, but my gut was screaming at me to find out the truth. And I did. There she was, sitting at a secluded table by the water, laughing with a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, with dark hair and an easy smile. She reached across the table and touched his hand, and he leaned in, saying something that made her laugh again. My blood boiled. That evening I acted like nothing had happened. When she returned to the suite, she gave me some vague story about meeting a couple from Boston at yoga. "They're so nice," she said, her tone light and carefree. We're going to try to meet up for drinks later this week. I nodded, pretending to believe her. Sounds great, I replied, keeping my voice steady. Inside, though, my mind was racing. I knew exactly what had happened. Her tone, her body language, it all screamed that she was hiding something. But instead of confronting her outright, I decided to wait. If she thought I was oblivious, it would be easier to uncover the truth. The next morning, as we lounged on the balcony, Helen casually mentioned she had booked a massage at the spa. It's supposed to be incredible, she said, pulling on a flowing sundress and grabbing her phone. I'll be back in a couple of hours. I forced a smile. Take your time, I said, leaning back in my chair. I might chill in the room or take a quick swim in the pool. She smiled briefly, barely meeting my eyes. Sounds good, she said, slipping out the door. As soon as she left, I gave her a few minutes before heading out. I stayed far enough behind to avoid suspicion, my heart pounding with every step. She didn't go to the spa. Instead, she walked straight to the lobby, glancing around as if looking for someone. And then I saw him. The same man from before. Tall, dark hair, and an easy smile. He approached her with a confidence that made my stomach turn. She lit up when she saw him, a smile so genuine and warm it was like a slap to my face. I ducked behind a column, pulling out my phone with trembling hands. I hit record, the screen capturing everything as they greeted each other. They hugged, lingering in the embrace. She reached out, her hand brushing his arm in a way that was far too intimate for just friends. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language spoke volumes. After a few minutes of hushed conversation, they headed to the bar. I kept my distance, finding a spot in the lobby where I could keep an eye on them without being noticed. They were completely engrossed in each other. She laughed at his jokes, her hand resting lightly on his forearm. He leaned in close, whispering something that made her smile, her cheeks flushing pink. It was like watching the Helen I used to know, but it wasn't me bringing her to life. It was him. I couldn't tear my eyes away, the reality of it settling in with each passing second. I snapped photos of them discreetly, each click of the camera cutting deeper into my chest. As if the universe itself wanted to twist the knife even further, they stood up, their bodies close, and walked toward the elevators. And then, they kissed. My breath hitched, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. I followed, keeping my head down, my phone still recording. They stepped into the elevator together, and I watched the doors close. Their reflection in the polished surface seared into my memory. I took the stairs, my legs moving on autopilot. My mind was a whirlwind of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak. By the time I reached their floor, I saw them at the end of the hallway, and I hit record once more. They kissed again, longer this time. Her arms slid around his neck, pulling him close before they disappeared into a room together. The door clicked shut, the sound echoing in the empty hallway like a final verdict. I stood there, my fists clenched, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Part of me wanted to storm in and confront them, to demand answers, but another part held me back. I approached the door, my breath shallow, and pressed my ear against it. At first, there was only the murmur of voices, low and indistinct. Then I heard it, her laugh. That laugh, once mine, now belonged to him. The voices grew quieter, replaced by soft murmurs and then unmistakable sounds. Moans. Her moans. My stomach churned, and I had to steady myself against the wall. Every sound from behind that door was like a dagger to my chest, each one twisting deeper than the last. I kept recording with my phone, capturing the door number and the muffled noises from inside. It was sick and twisted, but I needed this. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that my instincts hadn't been wrong. I stood there for what felt like hours, every second an eternity. When the noises subsided and the room fell silent, I turned and walked away, my hands shaking, my mind racing. This wasn't just betrayal. It was the destruction of everything I thought we had, everything I believed in. But now, I had the proof, and I was ready to use it. That night, I didn't say a word. When she came back to the suite, she acted like everything was normal. The massage was amazing, she said, slipping off her sandals. I nodded, forcing a smile. Glad to hear it. Inside, though, I was seething. With the photos, videos, and audio, the lies she had so carefully constructed were about to crumble beneath her. Once Helen had fallen asleep, I put my plan into motion. As the steady rhythm of her breathing filled the room, I slipped out of bed, my heart racing with a mix of fury and satisfaction. The truth had been exposed, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. I opened my phone and sent the photos to our closest friends and family, along with a brief, pointed message. Looks like Helen found someone else to keep her company on our romantic getaway. Then, just as I had promised myself, I canceled her return ticket. I wasn't about to let her slip away from the mess she'd created. The next morning, as I was packing my things, I heard Helen stir in the bed. I took a deep breath and walked over to the door, my suitcase in hand. When she opened her eyes and saw me standing there, the confusion was clear on her face. "Nick, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. "Leaving," I said, my voice flat and cold. There was no room for emotion anymore. "What? Why?" Her voice shook slightly, like she couldn't fathom what was happening. I threw my phone onto the bed, the screen facing up, displaying the damning photos of her with her lover, his hands on her, their lips meeting in a kiss that belonged to someone else. "Why do you think?" I said, my words biting through the air. The sight of her face as she saw the truth, the shock, the disbelief, was almost satisfying. But it wasn't enough. Her face drained of color as she reached for her phone. "Nick, it's not what it looks like." "Save it," I snapped, cutting her off. "You wanted a getaway with your lover? Fine, enjoy it, but you're not coming back with me." The words felt heavy, but they had to be said. Her jaw dropped. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm serious," I said, my voice as cold as ice. "Your return ticket's canceled. Figure it out with him." I turned and walked out of that room, leaving her there. I didn't look back as I made my way to the lobby and grabbed a taxi. The weight of the betrayal still stung, but something inside me was at peace. I knew the truth. And now, so did everyone else. During the ride to the airport, my mind started to clear. I had taken control. Helen had been playing a dangerous game, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me any longer. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with them. When I got home, the messages started flooding in. Friends and family were shocked, some furious on my behalf, others simply stunned at the audacity of it all. Helen called me repeatedly, but I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say to her. What she hadn't expected was that I'd discovered more than just the affair in those photos. That afternoon, I sat down at our computer to do some work and noticed Helen was still logged into her Facebook account. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to check her messages. That's when I learned this wasn't a one-time thing. The man she was with wasn't just some vacation fling. He was someone she'd been seeing for months, someone who'd become more than just a brief escape from our marriage. Helen had told him about the trip, about how she and I were going to the Caribbean, and she'd made a plan. She wanted him to come to the same resort so they could continue their affair without anyone suspecting a thing. She promised him it would be their secret getaway. Her lover had eagerly agreed, and I was none the wiser. The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. She had orchestrated everything, the trip, the lies, the manipulation. She'd planned this entire vacation around a man who wasn't me. I wasn't just a husband she was neglecting. I was a pawn in her twisted game. I couldn't believe it. After that, I didn't waste another moment. Filing for divorce was the only logical step. There was no room for reconciliation. Everything between us had been built on lies. As I filled out the papers, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. I had spent years thinking she was the one, but now I could see that I had been blind to the truth for too long. I blocked her number, finally severing the last thread of any emotional connection I had with her. She had betrayed me, but now I was free. As for Helen and the man she had left me for, they eventually became an official couple. Their affair, which had started months before our vacation, had blossomed into something more. For a while, it seemed like she had found her happy ending, but I soon heard rumors, just whispers at first, that things between them had taken a turn. After 7 months, they broke up. Apparently, Helen had cheated on him, just as she had done with me. Looking back, I can't say I regret how I handled it. It wasn't pretty, but sometimes you need to make a mess to clean up your life. I knew that in the end, I would be better off without her. I was no longer trapped by the lies, the deceit, or the guilt. I was free to rebuild my life on my terms. And for the first time in ages, I was finally at peace. Thank you for watching. I always thought Stacy and I had a solid marriage. 8 years together, 4 of them married. We weren't perfect, but who is? We had built a life. Weekend road trips, Friday movie nights, Sunday morning coffee runs. She was my best friend, the one person I trusted more than anyone in the world. She was always ambitious, always pushing forward in her career, and I admired that about her. I never felt insecure about her success. If anything, I was happy. But looking back, I see the signs now, the small shifts, the quiet changes that should have warned me. As Stacy's career soared, our routine began to change. At first, I was proud. I remember the night she came home excited. "Chris, I got promoted today." I hugged her tight, saying, "I knew you could do it." But soon, the long nights at the office and the sudden extra trips became more frequent. One evening, I sat at the kitchen table while Stacy was getting ready for a work dinner. I asked, "Honey, is everything all right? You've been so busy lately." She brushed it off with a smile. "It's just the new project, nothing to worry about." But as days turned into weeks, I started noticing little things. A hesitant glance at her phone, a secretive smile when it buzzed, and a defensiveness that wasn't there before. Everything changed one Saturday afternoon. It was so ordinary that I can pinpoint the exact moment. Stacy had gone grocery shopping alone, which wasn't strange since we often took turns. When she came back, I heard her car door slam, followed by the rustling of paper bags. I opened our front door, ready to help her carry whatever she'd picked up. She was juggling 3 full bags, so I hurried over to grab the heavier ones. "Here," I said, "let me help." "Thanks," she replied, smiling. It was that same sweet smile that once made me feel like the luckiest man on earth. For a moment, the tension in my mind lifted. I thought, she's just stressed lately. Everything is probably fine. But when I opened the back seat of her car to grab the last bag, something colorful caught my eye. It was partially hidden under the seat, a piece of lacy fabric. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. I bent down, tugged it free, and found myself holding a bra. A bright red bra, something I'd never seen Stacy wear. I paused, heart pounding, unsure of what to think. "Stacy, what's this doing here?" I asked softly, holding it in my hand. She froze for a moment, her eyes darting away. "Oh, that. It's nothing," she mumbled quickly. "I was going to get it repaired." Her voice was too casual, too rehearsed. She still wasn't looking at me. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to ignore the tight knot forming in my stomach. But the seed of doubt had already been planted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I waited until Stacy dozed off, pretending to do the same. Then I slid out of bed. My heart was beating so loudly I was convinced it would wake her. But she stayed still, her breathing deep and slow. Her phone was on the nightstand. Normally, I would never invade her privacy like that, but the bra in her car had shattered my trust. I grabbed the phone and tiptoed into the living room. My hands were shaking as I tried to unlock it. I knew her passcode, a simple 4-digit combination, her birthday month and day. She never saw a reason to hide it. The phone unlocked easily. I held my breath, stared at the screen. There were endless messages, but one conversation stood out. Ray work project. He was a coworker, or so she'd once casually mentioned. My pulse quickened. I opened the thread. My stomach turned. They weren't just texts. They were pictures. Intimate pictures of them together in what looked like a hotel room. There were videos, too, each labeled with random file names. I glimpsed just enough to confirm their explicit nature before I felt physically sick. I didn't need to see more. My worst fears had manifested themselves right there on the screen. Screenshots of their playful banter scrolled before my eyes. "Wish you were here with me now?" Ray wrote. "Soon, I hope. I hate going home sometimes. It feels empty," she responded. "Next trip, let's book extra nights just for us," he added. "Deal. I'm wearing that new lingerie you got me," she replied. I paused, my mind flashing back to the bra I'd found. The red lace. That must have been from him. The realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't cry out. I sat on our couch, phone in hand, reading every line, watching every piece of evidence confirm that I was the fool in this scenario. She had built a life within my home while giving pieces of herself to another man, a man who, according to some texts, was also married. That's when the depth of her deceit cut even deeper. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. I wasn't going to let my emotions dictate my next move. Not yet. Without hesitation, I forwarded everything to my phone. Every message, every picture, every video. I made sure I had it all. Proof. Then carefully, I deleted our conversation from her messages. Every trace of it, gone. She wouldn't know that I had seen it. She wouldn't understand that I had found out. I put the phone down and stared at the dark ceiling, my mind swirling with images of Stacy and Ray. The betrayal was complete, and I realized then that nothing would ever be the same again. That night after my painful discovery, I did what I had to do. I packed my essentials, a change of clothes, my wallet, a few personal items, and quietly slipped out of our home while Stacy slept. I left no note, no angry words scrawled on the walls. There was only the cold clarity of knowing that I couldn't live in a house built on betrayal. I checked into a hotel, but I didn't sleep. I just sat there staring at the wall, the weight of everything settling in. I knew what had to be done. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer. I explained everything, showed the evidence, and started the process immediately. There was no hesitation, no second thoughts. I didn't care about assets or negotiations, I just wanted out. By the afternoon, the paperwork was drafted and I signed the initial documents. I returned home one last time while Stacy was still at work. I gathered the rest of my things and left a manila envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside were the divorce papers and a short note. You made your choice. Here's mine. I took one last look around the place we had once built together. Then I walked out the door. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I reached out to Frank, my best friend, that day. Over a quiet cup of coffee in a New City cafe, I told him, I had to let go, Frank. The truth was too painful to ignore. He nodded. You did the right thing, Chris. It's time for you to find peace. We talked for a while, mostly about what had happened and what I planned to do next. After finishing my coffee, I said goodbye and went back to the hotel. The weight of everything was still there, but I felt a little lighter. That evening, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Stacy was calling over and over again, but I didn't pick up. I didn't need to hear her excuses, her fake apologies, or her desperate attempts to twist the truth. She had made her choice long before I found out. Now she could live with the consequences. I let the phone ring, watching as missed call after missed call piled up on my screen. Then I did something I knew would change everything. I sent the photos and videos to her parents. No long explanation, no angry rant, just the undeniable truth of who their daughter really was. With the images attached, I typed a simple message. This is why I'm leaving her. I wanted them to understand why this marriage was over, why I had walked away without looking back. Let them face the reality of what she had done. And I wasn't finished yet. I spent the next hour tracking down Ray's wife. It didn't take long. A few searches on social media, a couple of connections through mutual acquaintances, and I found her profile. Her name was Lisa. She looked happy, oblivious, living a life she thought was secure, just like I had been. She deserved to know. I sent her everything, the messages, the pictures, the videos. Then I waited. It didn't take long before she responded. Her first message was short. Who are you? I told her. I explained that I was Stacy's husband, or at least I had been until today. I told her she deserved the truth. The next message she sent was longer, filled with disbelief, anger, heartbreak. I understood that feeling. The crushing weight of realizing your entire world had been a lie. She thanked me, then she said she was leaving him. I sat back, phone in hand, taking a deep breath. Stacy's affair had destroyed more than just our marriage. It had shattered another home too. But I felt no guilt. They had chosen this. Now they could deal with the fallout. After a few days, I found a small apartment in a different part of town. Every morning I went for a run, letting the cool air clear my mind. I took up new hobbies, even joined a local community center. Slowly, I began to rebuild myself piece by piece. I started working harder at my job, and even enrolled in a few evening classes to learn something new. Every step away from the past was a step toward reclaiming who I was. I won't lie, it wasn't easy. There were nights I missed what we had, moments of loneliness that crept in when the silence of the apartment was too loud. But I reminded myself that living with betrayal was a heavier burden than moving on alone. I discovered that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the best beginnings. I was finally learning to trust myself again, to value my own feelings above the lies that had once controlled me. As the weeks turned into months, the memories of Stacy and our shared life faded into the background. I wasn't erasing them entirely. I was simply accepting them as part of my past and choosing to focus on the future I was creating for myself. The divorce went through without much of a fight. Stacy got the house, though I didn't care. I had no interest in keeping a place that was filled with nothing but broken trust and empty promises. I just wanted to be done. Through mutual friends, I eventually heard what became of her. She and Ray got together after everything fell apart. I wasn't surprised. They had already built something behind my back. It only made sense that they'd try to make it real. But their relationship didn't last. A few months later, I found out that Stacy cheated on him too. Apparently, Ray had thought he was different, that he was special. But just like me, he learned the hard way. If they cheat with you, they'll cheat on you. A year had passed since I left that familiar chaos behind. My life had settled into a steady rhythm when one cold evening, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I opened the door to find Stacy standing there, looking smaller, uncertain. Her eyes were downcast, and as soon as our eyes met, I sensed something had changed. "Chris, I've been trying to find you," she stammered. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. "Stacy," I said calmly, stepping aside to let her in, though my heart remained guarded. She hesitated on my threshold before speaking. "I made a terrible mistake. Save it," I interrupted, not unkindly but firmly. "I don't need apologies now." For a moment, silence filled the room. I could see the regret and vulnerability in her eyes, a look that was so different from the confident woman I once knew. "I lost everything because I made a choice that I can't undo," she admitted, almost in a whisper. "I thought I could have it all, but now I'm lost." I leaned against the door frame, arms folded, letting the silence speak. I thought back to all the small signs and moments that led me to this new life. "I don't have room for what you're saying now," I replied slowly. "I built my life on knowing my worth, and I won't let my past undo that." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she took a hesitant step forward. "Please, Chris, just talk to me. I need to understand what went wrong." But I shook my head. "I don't need answers from you now, Stacy. I made my choice when I left. I chose to believe in a future without lies." Her regret hung in the air like a heavy mist, and in that moment, I knew that no matter how much she might wish to undo her mistakes, the life I rebuilt had no space for that past. After she left that night, I closed the door firmly. I had given myself the closure I needed long ago, and now, her return was just another reminder of why I had to move on. Thank you for watching. When Mia and I moved into Maplewood Estates, I thought it was the perfect way to begin a new chapter. The past year had been stressful for both of us, me working overtime to secure the down payment for the house, and Mia juggling freelance work with her art projects. She always said she dreamed of living somewhere quiet and safe. I wanted to give her that, even if it meant sacrificing my own peace of mind. At first, the neighborhood seemed idyllic. Picture-perfect homes, kids riding their bikes, neighbors waving as they trimmed their hedges. But if I'd known what lay ahead, I never would have signed those papers. It all started innocently enough. Dan, the guy next door, was one of the first to introduce himself. He was the kind of guy you couldn't help but notice. Tall, broad shoulders, and a cocky grin that screamed, "I know I'm good looking." "Welcome to the neighborhood," he said, extending a hand the day we moved in. "If you need anything, tools, advice, a cold beer, just let me know." Mia lit up when she met him. "Thank you, it's so nice to meet someone friendly right away. Isn't he nice, Liam?" I shook Dan's hand, smiling politely. "Yeah, nice to meet you." But something about him set me on edge from the start. Maybe it was the way his eyes lingered on Mia just a little too long. Or maybe it was the way he seemed too polished, like he'd practiced every word he said in front of a mirror. At first, I tried to brush off my unease. Mia loved our new home, and I didn't want to spoil it by being paranoid. But Dan seemed to be everywhere. When I came home from work, there he was, chatting with Mia as she watered the garden. On weekends, he'd stop by with an offer to help fix something, our squeaky fence gate, her bike, even a dripping faucet in the kitchen. "He's just being nice," Mia said one evening when I voiced my concerns. "He's being too nice," I countered. "I don't trust him." She laughed. "You're jealous. It's kind of cute but unnecessary. Dan's just a neighbor, Liam. Relax." Things escalated quickly after that. Mia started spending more and more time with Dan. "He's so handy," she gushed one night over dinner. "He fixed the lawnmower in 5 minutes. Can you believe that?" "Yeah, amazing," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. She frowned. "You could be more grateful. It's not like you have the time to do everything around here." That stung, but I let it go. Then came the nights when she'd invite him over for dinner. I hated sitting across the table, watching them joke and laugh like old friends. She'd brush it off when I brought it up. "He's fun to be around, Liam. Don't be so uptight." The tipping point came one Saturday afternoon. I'd planned to take Mia out for lunch, but when I got home, I found Dan in the living room, holding a glass of iced tea. Mia turned to me, her face lighting up. "Oh, hey. Dan stopped by to show me some sketches for the landscaping project he's doing. Isn't he talented?" "Great. Can we talk for a minute, Mia?" Her smile faltered. "Now?" "Liam, we're in the middle of—" "Now," I said, my voice sharp. I led her into the kitchen, keeping my voice low. "What is going on?" I demanded. "Why is he always here?" She folded her arms. "You're overreacting. He's a neighbor, and he's helping us. Why do you always assume the worst?" "Because he's acting like he lives here." Her eyes narrowed. "Maybe if you weren't working all the time, I wouldn't have to rely on him so much." I was stunned. Rely on him? For what, Mia? Emotional support or something else? She stormed out of the room without answering. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Was I imagining things? Or was something really happening between Mia and Dan? The next day, while Mia was out running errands, I did something I never thought I'd do. I installed a small hidden camera in the living room. I felt sick as I set it up, but I had to know the truth. For the next few days, I forced myself to act normal, and I avoided bringing up Dan. I kissed Mia goodbye before work, made small talk over dinner, and even joked about the nosy old couple across the street. All the while, the camera recorded every moment in that living room. Each night after Mia fell asleep, I'd slip out of bed and check the footage on my laptop. Most of it was mundane, Mia watching TV, scrolling through her phone, or sketching on the couch. For a brief moment, I wondered if I was wrong, if I'd let my jealousy create a problem that didn't exist. But then came Wednesday evening. I had to work late that night, but the camera didn't miss a thing. When I checked the footage later, my heart sank. Dan showed up just minutes after I left the house. At first it seemed innocent enough. He and Mia sat on the couch chatting. She laughed at something he said, her hand resting casually on her knee. But then, Dan leaned in closer. "You know," he said, his voice low, "you're too good for him." Mia tilted her head, confused. "What are you talking about?" "Liam, he doesn't appreciate you the way you deserve. A woman like you should be with someone who puts you first." Mia gave a nervous laugh. "Dan, stop, you don't mean that." "I do." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I've been wanting to say this for weeks. I care about you, Mia, more than I should." I watched in stunned silence as Mia hesitated. For a moment, I thought she'd push him away, tell him to leave. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him. My chest tightened as I stared at the screen. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They kissed for what felt like an eternity, their hands wandering, their laughter soft and intimate. Then, as if there was some unspoken agreement, Dan stood up and reached for Mia's hand. She hesitated for a moment, glancing toward the front door, but then she let him guide her down the hallway, toward the bedroom. I watched as the camera caught only glimpses. Shadows moving past the hallway, the faint sound of muffled laughter, the bedroom door clicking shut. I didn't need to see what happened next to understand the betrayal unfolding just a few steps from where I had once kissed her goodnight. They were in there for nearly an hour. Afterward, they returned to the living room, their movements casual, as if nothing monumental had just happened. Mia sat on the edge of the couch, her hair slightly disheveled, while Dan leaned against the armrest beside her, watching her with that same smug grin that now made my stomach churn. He leaned down and kissed her again, slow and deliberate. She melted into it, her fingers lightly brushing his chest. Then Dan pulled back, smiling. "I should go before your husband comes home." Mia nodded, breathless, her cheeks flushed. "Yeah, you're right." He straightened his jacket and turned toward the door, but paused. "I'll see you tomorrow?" Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Yeah." Dan opened the door, glanced around to make sure no one was watching, and slipped out into the night. He left, but the damage was done. I sat there in the dark, my hands shaking. The anger that boiled inside me was almost unbearable. I wanted to storm into the bedroom, wake Mia up, and demand answers. I wanted to confront Dan, knock on his door, and make him regret ever stepping foot into my house. But instead I remained there, replaying the footage over and over again, trying to understand where it all went wrong. And then something else caught my attention. Later that day, while I was still at work, the camera had recorded something strange. Dan had come back into the house for a moment, this time with a box in hand. Mia was with him, watching as he carried it down the hall. She opened the hall closet, stepping aside while he placed the box in the back, careful to bury it under a pile of coats. What the hell was going on? The next morning I woke up with a new determination. The footage from the day before had left me with more than just a broken heart. It left me with questions. Questions about the box Dan had placed in our closet. What was so important that he had to bring it into my home and hide it there? Mia moved around the kitchen, humming softly as she poured herself a cup of coffee. She acted as if nothing had happened, her demeanor calm and relaxed. I forced myself to match her energy, pretending I hadn't spent half the night replaying the footage. "You working late tonight?" she asked casually, sitting at the table across from me. "No, I'll be home on time," I replied, keeping my tone even. "What about you? Any big plans today?" She shook her head, sipping her coffee. "Just the usual. I might run a few errands after work." "Sounds good," I said, nodding. Inside, I was a storm of emotions, but I couldn't let her see it. Not yet. When Mia finally grabbed her bag and kissed me goodbye, I managed to keep my expression neutral. "Have a good day," she said, her voice warm. "You too," I replied, watching her leave with a mixture of anger and resolve. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, I bolted to the hallway closet. My curiosity was too much to bear. What the hell had Dan hidden in my house? I moved aside the coats and boxes of holiday decorations, digging through the clutter until I found it. A nondescript cardboard box sealed tightly with duct tape. I took a step back, staring at it for a moment. My heart pounded as I reached for the roll of scissors nearby and cut through the tape. The lid popped open, revealing what looked like the contents of a thief's treasure chest. Inside were stacks of cash, wrapped in rubber bands. Beneath the cash were expensive-looking jewelry pieces, gold necklaces, diamond rings, and bracelets that sparkled in the sunlight streaming through the window. Underneath those were small electronics, watches, phones, and even what appeared to be a gold-plated lighter. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This wasn't just random junk someone might leave behind. This was stolen. There was no doubt in my mind. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the box, my hands trembling. This wasn't just about Mia cheating on me anymore. This was something bigger, something criminal. And now, thanks to her, my home had become a hiding place for stolen goods. I wanted to call her immediately to demand answers, but the part of me that had spent the last few days gathering evidence knew I had to be smart about it. If Mia was involved in this, she wasn't going to tell me the truth, not willingly. I had to stay calm. I had to plan my next move carefully. When Mia came home that evening, I acted as if nothing was wrong. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, the same way she always did. "How was your day?" she asked, slipping off her shoes by the door. "Busy," I replied, keeping my tone light. "You?" "The same," she said, smiling as she headed toward the kitchen. "I picked up some stuff for dinner. Thought I'd make that chicken recipe you like." I nodded, forcing a smile. "Sounds great." But inside, my mind was racing. I had seen enough. Now, it was time to act. The next day during my lunch break, I met Rick, an old college friend who now worked in law enforcement. We sat in a quiet corner of a diner, the hum of conversation around us masking the tension in our voices. "So, let me get this straight," Rick said, leaning in. "Your neighbor's been stashing stolen goods in your house and your wife's been helping him?" I nodded. "I've got proof. There's a box in my closet and I've got footage of him sneaking it in." Rick frowned, his brow furrowing. "Liam, this is serious. If the police find that box and think you're involved, I know, I interrupted. That's why I need your help. I want to turn it in anonymously. I don't want Mia or Dan to know I'm the one who tipped you off. Rick hesitated. You're sure about this? Once I get the ball rolling, there's no turning back. I nodded firmly. I'm sure. This has to end. 2 days later, it all came to a head. It was early evening, and Mia and I were sitting on the couch watching a sitcom. She looked so at ease, as if the last few weeks hadn't happened, as if she hadn't been sneaking around with Dan, helping him stash stolen goods under our roof. Then, the flashing red and blue lights cut through the curtains and my stomach tightened. Mia bolted upright, her laughter freezing mid-breath. What's going on? She whispered, panic creeping into her voice. I stood slowly, my gaze fixed on the window as I saw the flashing red and blue lights outside, the officers moving quickly as they surrounded Dan's house. Mia rushed to the window and pulled the curtain fully aside. What's happening? She cried, her hands wringing together as she paced the room. I stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold outside. Looks like your boyfriend's in trouble, I said coldly, my voice cutting through her panic like a knife. She froze, her wide eyes darting to me. What are you talking about? I turned to face her, my expression unreadable. You know exactly what I mean, Mia. Her face paled and she stammered, Liam, I don't, I snapped, my tone sharp enough to make her flinch. Don't you dare lie to me again. I know everything. I know about the box, about the stolen goods, and I know about you and Dan. Her eyes filled with tears and she shook her head. You called the cops, didn't you? You set him up. I didn't have to, I lied, my voice calm but deadly. You brought this into our home, Mia. You let him use you. You let him use me. What the hell were you thinking? She began to cry, her voice breaking as she tried to explain. I didn't know what to do. He said he needed a place to hide something for a while, and I thought... You thought what? I interrupted, my voice rising. That I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't find out? Or did you just not care? It wasn't like that, she shouted, her tears falling freely now. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I took a step closer, my fists clenched. Then what was it supposed to be, Mia? Because from where I'm standing it looks a lot like betrayal. She looked away, her shoulders shaking with sobs. You don't understand. Then make me understand, I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. Tell me why you did it. Tell me why you threw away our marriage for him. She hesitated for a moment, then whispered, because I felt alive with him. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Alive? I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. You're telling me you threw away years of trust and love because Dan made you feel alive? She wiped at her tears, her voice trembling. You weren't home, Liam. You were always working, always busy. I was lonely. Lonely? I spat, my voice rising. I was working to give us a life, Mia. A home, a future. And while I was breaking my back for us, you were screwing the neighbor? It wasn't just about that, she said, her voice desperate. It wasn't just sleeping with him, Liam. With Dan I felt a spark, something I haven't felt in years. I stared at her, my jaw tightening. So what? Marriage gets hard and your solution is to cheat? To throw yourself into the arms of the first guy who gives you butterflies? It's not that simple, she cried. You weren't here. You were never here, Liam. I needed someone, and Dan... Dan, I interrupted, the name leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. You mean the guy who's been using you, just like he used our house? The guy who's now sitting in the back of a squad car, probably plotting how to save himself while throwing you under the bus? She shook her head, her voice weak. He wasn't using me. He cared about me. I laughed bitterly. Cared about you? Is that what he told you? Let me guess. He promised you excitement, passion, a life free from responsibility? Her silence was answer enough. I took a step back, running a hand through my hair. You know what, Mia? Maybe I wasn't home enough. Maybe I could have done better. But none of that justifies what you did. None of it excuses the lies, the betrayal, the utter disrespect for everything we built together. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered, her voice trembling. I laughed bitterly. Didn't mean to hurt me? You didn't even think about me, Mia. Not once. You only thought about yourself. She sank onto the couch, her face in her hands. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it did. I said coldly. And now it's too late to fix it. We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of her confession hanging heavy in the air. Outside, the police cars were gone, leaving behind only the faint glow of streetlights and the shattered remnants of my trust. "What happens now?" she asked finally, her voice small and fragile. I looked at her, the woman I had once loved more than anything, and felt nothing but anger and pity. "What happens now?" I said, my voice steady, "is that I'm done." Her head snapped up, her tear-streaked face filled with panic. "Liam, please." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Save it, Mia. Save the apologies, the excuses, the crocodile tears. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." I stood up, grabbing my keys. "I'll be staying somewhere else tonight. Don't bother calling me." She reached for me, but I pulled away. "Liam, we can work through this," she begged. "Please don't throw everything away." I turned back to her, my expression cold. "You already threw it away, Mia. I'm just walking away from the wreckage." And with that, I left, the sound of her sobs following me as I stepped into the night. In the days that followed, I filed for divorce. I handed over the footage of Mia and Dan, along with the proof of the stolen goods, ensuring I walked away from the settlement unscathed. Mia, however, wasn't so lucky. She left with nothing, not the house, not the car, and certainly not my forgiveness. As for Dan, his little operation was dismantled by the police and he ended up behind bars. And Mia? She disappeared from my life, as if she were a ghost of a past I no longer cared to remember. I didn't ask where she went, and I certainly didn't care. She was someone else's problem now. After years of building a life together, I thought her absence might leave a void. But instead, I felt an unexpected sense of relief, freedom from the lies, the betrayal, and the weight of a marriage that had long since lost its meaning. Justice had been served, and for the first time in years I could breathe. No more secrets, just peace. Thank you for watching.
She said it while she was folding laundry. Nothing dramatic, no shouting, just one line, like she was checking off a to-do list. "I think you'd be happier without me." That's how Pamela said it. Not a question, not a maybe, simply a statement of fact. I was standing in the doorway, watching her sort socks on the bed. She didn't even glance up when she said it. No hesitation in her voice, like she had practiced saying it alone in the mirror for weeks and was finally getting it out. I didn't respond right away. I remember looking down at the grocery bag I had just brought in. I set it down slowly. "Is that what you want?" I asked. Pamela paused, just for a second. Then she kept folding. "I don't know what I want, but this isn't working." She walked past me with the laundry basket. No eye contact, just moved like we were roommates dividing chores, not a married couple breaking apart. I followed her into the hallway. "Are we not even going to talk about this?" "Matthew," she said sharply, turning around halfway up the stairs. "There's nothing to talk about. I've felt this way for a long time. I just didn't know how to say it until now." I didn't follow her upstairs. I stayed in the hallway for a long time, watching the ceiling. There wasn't anger, not yet, just something hollow. She'd spoken the truth, or at least her version of it. And the worst part was, it didn't even sound like it hurt her to say it. Pamela had already made the emotional exit. This was just the paperwork. And me? I hadn't even known we were negotiating a goodbye. Looking back, the signs were all there. They didn't arrive in explosions. They came in slow, quiet shifts. Pamela used to text me during work. Nothing deep, just check-ins. "How's everything going? Want me to pick up dinner?" Then one day the messages stopped. She said she was just slammed at work. Deadlines, new projects, client meetings. I believed her. Then she stopped waiting up for me. I'd come home from late shifts at the finance firm and the house would be dark. No plate left out, no TV on. Just her, already asleep, face turned away. One night, I brought up the distance over dinner. "Pamela, is something going on?" She kept slicing her salmon like I hadn't spoken. "Nothing's going on, Matthew. I'm just tired." "You've been tired for months." She looked up then, calm but cold. "And you've been gone for months. So maybe we're both tired." I didn't push it. I took the hit and moved on. In the following weeks, I tried harder. I cooked more, took over the dry cleaning, even booked us a weekend at a cabin by the lake. She said she had work to catch up on. Instead, she spent that weekend out with people I'd never met. She said they were co-workers. I never saw any proof. She'd come home with perfume I didn't recognize and smiles that faded the second she walked through the door. The distance didn't feel like a break. It felt like a shift, like she was slowly rewriting the rules of our marriage without telling me. One night, I went to kiss her goodnight, and she turned her head. No explanation. She simply turned away. I sat in the living room for hours after that. I didn't sleep. Watched the clock tick past midnight. She had already started letting go. I was just the last one to get the memo. A week after the laundry conversation, I found the first real crack. It was a Tuesday night. Pamela said she had a work dinner. Some client from Toronto was in town. She left in a black blouse she hadn't worn in years, and heels I didn't even know she still owned. She didn't wear her wedding ring. At 10:46 p.m., a message popped up on the iPad she'd left on the kitchen counter. She was still signed into her messages. I didn't go looking for anything. It was just there. A name I didn't recognize. Derek. The last message read, "Tonight was good. You always leave me wanting more." No emojis, no hearts, just words. Confident. Familiar. I tapped the thread. The messages were spaced out. Some short, some flirty. References to jokes I didn't know. Conversations about weekends. Nothing graphic. But it didn't need to be. When she came home at midnight, I was sitting at the dining table. She looked surprised. Not guilty. Just caught off guard. "You're up?" "Yeah." I looked at her. "How was dinner?" "Long." She walked to the sink, poured herself a glass of water. "Who's Derek?" Her shoulders locked for half a second. Then she turned around, acting. "He's a co-worker from the Toronto office." Seemed like more than that. "I don't know what you're implying, Matthew." I stood, calm, focused. "I'm not implying anything. I read your messages." Silence. She set the glass down and crossed her arms. "It wasn't physical, if that's what you're thinking. That's not the part that bothers me." She blinked. "Then what does? You wanted to be seen, heard, desired. You just stopped wanting it from me." She didn't deny it. Didn't apologize. She just said, "You don't get to judge me. You checked out first." That was the moment I knew. She didn't regret the messages. She regretted being caught. And I wasn't going to fix something she didn't think was broken. After that night, I didn't confront her again. I didn't ask about Derek. I didn't demand an apology. I just started pulling back, quietly. I stopped picking up groceries on the way home, stopped folding her laundry in with mine, stopped pretending like we were still a team. I let things sit, dishes in the sink, mail on the counter, silence in the car. At first, she didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she thought it was just another cold front, one of those quiet spells couples fall into. But by the 5th day, she asked, "Did you forget to pay the gas bill?" "No," I said without looking up from my coffee. "I paid mine." A week later, she texted from work. "Did you drop off the dry cleaning?" I didn't reply. When I got home, she was standing in the hallway, arms crossed. "You ignoring me now?" "No," I said, walking past. "Just letting you handle your part." Something about that bothered her more than yelling ever would have. The next morning, she wore makeup for a meeting, hair curled, red lipstick. It wasn't for me. That night, she told me she was grabbing drinks with Lena from HR, but her phone buzzed twice while she was getting ready. Derek's name lit up both times. I didn't mention it. Instead, I turned off the porch light after she left, locked the door behind her. When she came home around midnight, she knocked. I opened the door slowly. She looked at me like I was supposed to say something. "Forget your keys?" I asked. She stared at me, eyes sharp. "You're being a real jerk lately." I shrugged. I learned from the best. She didn't say another word, just walked past me like I was furniture. But I could feel it. The ground under her feet wasn't steady anymore. She thought I'd stay still while she wandered. Now she wasn't sure what I'd do next. I waited until everything was lined up. The separate account, the new apartment lease, signed in my name only, movers on standby. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't tip my hand. I just prepared. Then I made a call Pamela never saw coming. Her cousin Elena and I had always been cordial, not close. But once, at a family barbecue, she looked at me across the grill and said, "Pamela loves fireworks, but she marries the fuse." I didn't get it back then. Now I did. Elena picked up on the second ring. "Matthew? I need a favor. Quiet one." She didn't hesitate. We met at a coffee shop 2 nights later. I showed her the screenshots, texts between Pamela and Derek, calendar events that didn't match her stories. Elena took a slow breath. She really did it, huh? She says it wasn't physical. With Pamela, it never starts that way. I looked at her. I'm not asking you to pick a side. I just want her off balance. How? Bring up Derek. Nothing heavy, just enough for her to wonder how his name got to you. Elena raised an eyebrow. You want me to rattle her? She's been real comfortable thinking no one's watching. Time she stopped feeling so sure. She smirked. You always this quiet when you're planning a hit? I didn't smile. I'm not hitting anything. I'm just turning the lights on. Pamela changed within 48 hours. She came home earlier, asked if I wanted takeout, sat next to me on the couch instead of the other end. She laughed a little too loud at something I didn't find funny. I stayed quiet, watching. 2 nights later, she said, Do you think we're okay? I just said, You tell me. She didn't respond, but her eyes stayed on me longer than they had in months. For the first time, she looked like someone who realized she was losing, and I wasn't doing anything to stop it. She started overcorrecting. Pamela began cooking dinners again, actual meals, not microwave lasagna and DoorDash sushi. She bought my favorite beer, put on music while I was in the shower. One night, she asked if I wanted to take a weekend away. Just us, somewhere quiet. We need space to talk, she said, to reconnect. I told her I had meetings. Since when do you work weekends? She asked. Since I stopped trying to keep this marriage on life support, I said, without looking up from my laptop. She didn't push, but I could see the panic bloom behind her eyes. The following Tuesday, I moved the last of my personal files from our shared desktop, transferred all our joint subscriptions, killed the spare credit card. Everything was now under my name, or removed from hers. She still hadn't noticed the joint account was drained, the utilities switched. The life she thought we shared was already ghosted. On Saturday morning, she hovered in the kitchen while I made coffee. Did you change the Netflix password? She asked. Yeah. She waited, expecting more. I sipped my coffee. You said you wanted space. She flinched just slightly, then tried a smile. I didn't mean it like that. I know exactly how you meant it, Pamela. You just didn't expect me to believe you. That night, her phone stayed face up on the table. She made a show of ignoring it, even let it ring once and didn't check the caller. I didn't ask who it was. I already knew. The next morning, she lingered in bed, wore one of my old shirts. She waited for me to say something, anything. I got dressed in silence. At the door, she called after me. Are you really done with this? I looked at her, calm, steady. I was done the night you started needing someone else to feel seen. Then I closed the door, and for the first time, she didn't follow. I left on a Wednesday. She was at work. I took what was mine, clothes, laptop, documents. I packed it all into the trunk of my car, drove across town, and unlocked the door to a furnished short-term rental I'd signed for a month. Nothing fancy, just quiet, simple, mine. On the kitchen counter back at the house, I left a letter. Pamela, you were right. You're better off on your own. So am I. The utilities are covered until the 30th. Everything else has been separated. The lease is now in my name only. No fights, no drama, no more silence from either of us. My keys are in the bowl by the door. Matthew. I didn't wait for a reaction. I turned off my phone for the rest of the day. When I turned it back on that night, there were 3 missed calls, then 5, then a message. Where are you? I didn't reply. She didn't call the next day, or the one after. But on Saturday, Elena texted me. She came to Mom's, crying, totally wrecked. I didn't ask for details. I just said, thanks. The following evening, a new message came in from Pamela. I know I messed up. Please, just talk to me. We can fix this. There was a time I would have clung to that. Now, it felt like someone reaching for a railing after the train had already left. She hadn't noticed when I was slipping away. Now that I was gone, she was finally listening to the silence. A week later, I agreed to meet her. Neutral ground, a diner off 12th Street. She was already there when I arrived, hands wrapped around a mug, hair pulled back, wearing the navy sweater I'd bought her last winter. Thanks for coming, she said. I nodded, didn't sit yet. She looked up at me, eyes red. You didn't even say goodbye. I did, I said. You just didn't read it until I was gone. She bit her lip. I don't know what to say except, I'm sorry. I thought I wanted something else. I thought I'd find clarity out there. Instead, I just lost everything. Clarity comes late for some people, I said, sliding into the booth. There was a long silence between us, the kind that used to mean war. This one just meant it was almost over. I ended things with Derek, she said quietly. I figured. He didn't mean anything. He meant enough that you were willing to risk everything. Pamela's voice cracked. I never wanted to lose you. You didn't lose me, Pamela. You gave me up. There's a difference. She reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope. It's a letter. I wrote it last night. Just, if you ever want to know how I got here. I left it on the table. I know what matters, I said, then reached into my coat and pulled out my own envelope. She looked at it like it might explode. Divorce? She asked. I nodded once. She didn't cry, not right away. She just stared at the paper like she could rewind something by holding it long enough. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Is there any version of this where we come back from it? I stood up. There might have been, I said, but I was the only one fighting for it. And now I've learned how to fight for myself. Her eyes welled up. Matthew! I reached for my coat. Take care of yourself, I said calmly. You'll need to. And I walked out. The diner door closed behind me. Quiet. Final. She had opened with a line. You'd be happier without me. And now, finally, I was. Thank you for watching.
When Mia and I hit our third wedding anniversary, everything seemed smooth. We weren't in any race to have kids. Honestly, we liked our freedom. Spontaneous weekends, late-night movies, doing whatever we wanted. Mia had a spark that never faded. She was funny, smart, and just reckless enough to make life interesting. There was one thing, though, that always gave her away. Whenever she tried to lie, she couldn't hold eye contact. I picked up on it early, back when we were just dating. She'd get nervous, glance sideways, and her hands would fidget like she was looking for an escape route. It wasn't a big deal. Actually, I thought it was kind of cute, like having my own built-in truth radar. That spring, Mia started dropping hints about wanting a real vacation. She said work was draining her, and she needed a total reset. Beaches, cocktails, the whole deal. I wasn't feeling it. I had a huge project due at the firm and couldn't just disappear for 2 weeks. Plus, beaches weren't my thing. Give me a mountain lodge or a city escape any day. One night over dinner, Mia set her fork down and said, "Maybe I should just go without you this time." I didn't love the idea. Her, beaches, bars, without me? It rubbed me the wrong way. But Mia smiled quick and added, "I'll go with Jenna. Just a girls' trip. Spa days. Yoga on the beach. Nothing crazy, I promise." Jenna was her best friend, recently divorced and still acting like it was spring break every weekend. I wasn't thrilled, but Mia looked so hopeful sitting across from me. I hesitated, then nodded. I trusted her. I had to. "All right," I said. "Go blow off some steam. Just don't end up on some reality show about party disasters." She laughed, clinking her glass against mine. "Deal." And that was that. At the time, I thought saying yes showed how solid we were. Looking back, it showed exactly how blind trust can make you a target. But standing there watching her pack the night before she left, none of that even occurred to me. I helped her book the flights, even tossed in some extra cash for shopping or whatever. She was buzzing with excitement, and honestly, I felt good about it. We were just two people who trusted each other without a second thought. I didn't know it yet, but letting her go was the biggest mistake I'd ever make. Mia left on a Wednesday morning. I dropped her off at the airport, kissed her goodbye, and told her to have fun. The first few days she kept in touch like clockwork. Selfies on the beach, boomerangs of her feet in the sand, videos of Jenna trying to surf and wiping out hard. She'd text me late at night, "Miss you, Jimmy. Wish you were here." I missed her too, more than I expected. The house felt too big without her laughter bouncing off the walls. Then, around day 5, the texts slowed down. No more videos, no more calls. I figured maybe she was just caught up in the fun, or maybe her phone had bad service. Still, A small knot started forming in my gut. One night, around 11, I shot her a quick "Good night, babe" text. It sat there on read for hours before she finally replied with a half-hearted, "Night. Super tired. Love you." It didn't sound like her. Mia always typed with little hearts or inside jokes. This one felt mechanical. The next morning I texted again. No answer. I called around lunch. Straight to voicemail. I told myself I was being paranoid. Jenna was a handful. Maybe Mia was just trying to keep up with her. Maybe they were off on some island tour where there wasn't any reception. Still that night, lying alone in our bed, staring at the dark ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When she finally messaged 2 days later, it was just a blurry photo of some local market and the words, "Been busy. We'll catch up later. No miss you. No love you." I stared at my phone a long time after that, feeling that first cold edge of suspicion creep into my chest. Looking back, that was the moment I should have listened to my gut. But instead, I convinced myself to wait. Just a few more days until she was home. Then I'd know for sure if I was just being crazy, or if the ground was about to collapse under my feet. Mia got back on a Sunday evening. I picked her up from the airport, standing by baggage claim, feeling a mix of relief and unease I couldn't shake off. She looked good. Tanned, glowing, a little too glowing maybe. She threw her arms around me like nothing had changed. "I missed you so much," she said, squeezing tight. I hugged her back, but something felt off, like hugging a stranger who smelled like your wife. On the drive home, she talked nonstop, about the beaches, the food, the late-night bonfires. Jenna this, Jenna that. It almost sounded rehearsed. At home, she dropped her suitcase in the living room and let out a breath. "I'm dying for a shower," she said, already heading for the stairs. I stayed by the suitcase, hands in my pockets. "Hold up," I said, half teasing. "You didn't come back empty-handed, did you?" She laughed a little too fast. "Of course not. Hang on." Mia knelt by the suitcase and started digging through her clothes. As she moved things around, I caught a flash of something. New lingerie tucked between her usual clothes. Bright colors. Lacy, expensive looking. Not her style. Not by a mile. I said nothing. Just kept watching. Then she froze. Just for a second. I caught it. Her hand hovered over a little black bag tucked between her clothes. She pulled it out slowly like it might burn her fingers and handed it to me. "Here. Got you some local rum. Supposed to be amazing," she said, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I took the bag and glanced inside. A bottle of rum, wrapped in a cheap souvenir t-shirt with a cartoon dolphin on it. "Thanks," I said, setting it down. She laughed a little too loud, shoved the suitcase aside, and disappeared into the bathroom. I stood there alone in the living room, holding the bottle, holding the stupid shirt, and for the first time in my marriage, wondering what the hell my wife had been doing when she stopped texting me back. The next few days I tried to push it out of my head. I really did. Mia acted normal, almost too normal. She cooked dinner, laughed at my bad jokes, even suggested we have a movie night like old times. But the more she acted like nothing happened, the more I noticed the small things. Her phone never left her side. She changed her lock screen password. She'd get random texts late at night and flip the phone face down. One evening, while she was in the shower, I glanced at her phone buzzing on the counter. A name popped up. Brady, with a small profile picture next to it. Some tanned guy with a cocky grin. No shirt. I didn't know any Brady. When she came out wrapped in a towel, I casually asked, "Who's Brady?" Her whole body stiffened before she forced a laugh. "Oh, just some guy Jenna and I met on the island. He organized the snorkeling tours. Harmless." I nodded, playing it cool. "Right," I said. "Harmless enough to text you at midnight?" Mia frowned. "You're reading too much into it, Jimmy. Seriously." She kissed me on the cheek too quickly and disappeared into the bedroom. That night, while she slept beside me, dead to the world, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The next day, while she was at the grocery store, I sat down at my computer and pulled up the resort's Instagram page. Photos, videos, reels, tourists laughing, staff members goofing around. Then I found it. A video from one of the beach parties. A bonfire at night, music blasting. There, front and center, was Mia, laughing, dancing, a drink in one hand, and Brady's arm slung casually around her shoulders. I recognized him instantly from the photo on her phone. Not some tour guide in a uniform. Shirtless, looking at her the way a man looks at a woman he's already had. Their faces were close. Too close. Like they were ready to kiss right there in front of everyone. I sat back in my chair, the blood draining from my face. It wasn't just a vacation. Mia had a whole other life the second she left my sight. And now she was lying to my face like nothing ever happened. That night after dinner, I couldn't pretend anymore. Mia was curled up on the couch scrolling through her phone, pretending not to notice me staring at her. I set my beer down a little too hard. "We need to talk." She looked up, casual. "About what?" "Brady," I said flatly. Her smile twitched. "I told you, he's just some guy." I cut her off. "I saw the videos, Mia, the resort's page. You were hanging all over him like a groupie." She set the phone down slowly. Her face went pale. "You're overreacting," she said, voice tight. "It was just dancing. Everyone was dancing." I leaned forward. "Dancing? You were 2 seconds away from kissing him." Silence. I waited, giving her the chance to come clean, giving her a shot at honesty. Instead, she said, "You're paranoid, Jimmy. You're making something out of nothing." And there it was, the lie. She couldn't hold my gaze. Her fingers were fidgeting, twisting the hem of her shirt. The same old tell she'd always had. "You slept with him," I said. Not a question. A statement. Mia's mouth opened, then shut. "No," she whispered. But her face gave her away, and I realized something deep and ugly. She wasn't sorry she did it. She was sorry she got caught. I stood up. "Pack your things." She blinked at me like she didn't understand the words. "Jimmy, please." "Now, Mia." She started crying, soft and pathetic. But I didn't budge. I wasn't going to let her sweet-talk her way out of this. 15 minutes later, she was stuffing clothes into a bag, wiping at her face with the back of her hand. She paused in the doorway, suitcase in hand, mascara running. "It didn't mean anything," she said. "I swear." I said nothing, just closed the door behind her, and locked it. The house was dead quiet after Mia left. I sat there for a minute staring at the door. Then I got up, turned off the porch light, and went to bed. The next few days were brutal. I didn't tell anyone right away. I worked, I slept, I worked some more. Anything to keep from thinking too hard. Then Jenna called me. "Jimmy," she said, her voice low and uncomfortable. "I think you should know. Mia's not doing great." "Yeah, well," I said, "actions have consequences." Jenna hesitated. She went to the clinic. She wasn't feeling right. They did some tests." I didn't say anything. "She tested positive for an STD, Jenna finished in a rush. "She thought you should get tested too, just in case." There it was, the final kick to the gut. Even after throwing everything away, Mia had managed to leave behind one last mess. I thanked Jenna, hung up, and sat there for a long time, feeling a kind of anger that didn't even have edges. It was just heavy. I got tested the next morning. Thankfully, I was clean. 2 weeks later, the divorce papers were filed. No drama. No fighting over stuff. She didn't even try to contest it. I heard from a mutual friend that Mia ended up renting a tiny studio apartment across town. Word was she looked rough, thinner, paler, quieter. The same friend said Mia was telling people it was just a mistake, a stupid vacation fling. Mistakes have a way of costing you everything. You think when someone burns your life down, it'll leave you wrecked for years. Turns out once you clear out the ashes, you've got a lot of space to rebuild. 6 months after Mia walked out, the house finally felt like mine again. I repainted the walls. I tossed the mattress we used to share and got a new one. Fresh sheets, fresh start. I even took a trip, a real trip, not a sad runaway mission. Mountains, not beaches. Cold air, big skies, nobody lying next to me pretending everything was fine. I spent the days hiking and the nights sleeping in places where my phone didn't work. Standing on a cliff edge, Looking out at the valley below, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Mia tried to reach out once. Some long, rambling email about apologies and if only we could go back. I didn't answer. I deleted it without reading past the first line. A few weeks later, I went to a barbecue at a friend's house. Jenna showed up too, with her new boyfriend. At some point, I pulled him aside and told him quietly what really happened on that trip. Not to blow up their relationship. That wasn't my business. But if Jenna was planning more girls' trips, I figured he deserved to know what those trips could really mean. He didn't say much, just nodded once, sharp and grim. After that, I let it go. No revenge tour, no late-night rants. Just me, living the life Mia threw away better than ever. Sometimes when I think about it, about how close I came to tying myself forever to someone like that, I actually feel grateful. She gave me the best gift of all. She showed me exactly who she was. Before we had kids, before there were mortgages and soccer games and anniversaries stacked up like landmines. Better to bury the marriage than bury myself. And I sleep a lot easier now, knowing the next time I fall in love, it'll be with someone who knows how to hold eye contact when it matters most. Thank you for watching. Cynthia and I had been married for 7 years. She was the kind of woman who could light up a room with her smile, the type of partner you build a life with. At least that's what I thought. Then there was Jake, my best friend since college. He was practically family, the guy I trusted with my secrets, my business, my life. The three of us were close, inseparable even. Cynthia and Jake had a natural chemistry, but I never thought much of it. In fact, I liked that my wife and best friend got along so well. It was a relief not to juggle separate parts of my life. "Jake, you're here more than I am," I'd joked once when I came home to find him in the kitchen with Cynthia, laughing about something or other. "Well, someone has to make sure she doesn't burn the house down while you're working," he shot back with a grin. Cynthia laughed and I joined in, blissfully ignorant of the dark truth that was brewing just beneath the surface. The cracks started to show one Thursday evening when I left the office earlier than usual. A project had wrapped up ahead of schedule, and I decided to surprise Cynthia with dinner. But as I stepped into the house, the atmosphere felt off. I heard her voice coming from the living room, low and urgent. "No, he has no idea," she said, her words clipped. "It's all going according to plan. I'll talk to you later. Love you." I froze. She hadn't seen me yet, and for a moment I debated whether to announce myself or slip back out the door. But the knot forming in my stomach urged me forward. "Who was that?" I asked, stepping into the room. Cynthia jumped, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. "Daniel, you scared me. That was someone from my yoga class." "A yoga classmate?" I raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you end yoga calls with 'love you'?" She laughed, but it was strained. "Oh, you know how we are. Just being playful. Don't read into it." Her explanation didn't sit right, but I let it go. Or at least I pretended to. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Cynthia slept soundly beside me. Her words played over and over in my mind. "No, he has no idea. It's all going according to plan." What plan? And who was she talking to? The next day, curiosity got the better of me. Cynthia's phone was password protected, but after 7 years of marriage, I knew her well enough to guess the code. It was our anniversary date. Typical. While she was in the shower, I scrolled through her messages, my heart racing. And that's when I saw it. A thread with Jake. "Can't wait to see you tonight," Jake wrote. "Me too. Just a few more weeks and we'll be free of him," Cynthia responded. I stared at the screen, my vision swimming. Free of me? What the hell did that mean? I read further, my chest tightening with every line. They weren't just having an affair, they were plotting against me. Cynthia had been falsifying expense reports at my company, and Jake was feeding false information to potential investors. Together they were setting me up to fail. I didn't confront them, not yet. I needed proof, something undeniable. I wasn't just going to expose their affair, I was going to dismantle their plan piece by piece and watch it crumble around them. Over the next few days I set my plan in motion. First, I hired a private investigator to follow them. Every text, every rendezvous, every whispered conversation in a dimly lit restaurant, it was all documented in excruciating detail. The private investigator even managed to snap photos of them together, holding hands in public like they were free of consequences. Next, I bugged my house, hiding tiny recording devices in places they'd never think to look. Under the coffee table, inside a potted plant, even in the light fixture above the dining table. Listening to the recordings was like swallowing poison, but each word they spoke fueled my resolve. At work, I started scrutinizing Cynthia's expense reports. I'd always trusted her to handle the finances, but now I saw the discrepancies glaring back at me. Payments routed to unfamiliar accounts, invoices for services we'd never used. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. I brought in my company's legal team to quietly investigate further. And then there were the fake investor leads. Jake was supposed to be helping me bring new partners on board for the company's expansion. Instead, he'd been steering me toward dead ends and questionable contacts, all while siphoning confidential information to use against me. It was like watching someone take a wrecking ball to the empire I'd spent years building. A few days later, the opportunity presented itself. Cynthia had mentioned she'd be working late at the office, and Jake had casually dropped that he had a business dinner to attend. I didn't buy it for a second. I called the private investigator I'd hired and asked him to tail them. He didn't need much direction. He knew what I was looking for. A few hours later, I received a text from him. "They're at the Paramount Hotel. I've got everything you need. Meet me tomorrow." The next day, the investigator showed up at my door with a thick envelope in hand. He handed it over without saying a word. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside were a series of photos, each one a gut punch. There was Jake and Cynthia standing in the hotel lobby, looking entirely too comfortable with each other. Jake was holding her hand, leaning in close, whispering something that made her laugh. They walked hand in hand to the elevator, the chemistry between them undeniable. The final shot was taken as they entered their hotel room together, a look of anticipation on both their faces. The sequence of photos confirmed what I had already known. They had been sneaking around for months. That was the final nail in the coffin. But I wasn't done. I still wanted to catch them in the act, where their betrayal cut deepest. One evening, while I was working late, I parked a few blocks away from my house and waited. My car windows fogged up as the minutes ticked by, but I didn't care. Sure enough, Jake's car pulled into my driveway. I crept around to the side of the house, careful to stay out of sight. Through the living room window, I could see them sitting on the couch. Cynthia was perched on the edge, her body angled toward Jake as if she couldn't get close enough. Jake leaned back, relaxed, one arm draped over the backrest. They looked like they owned the place. "I've rerouted the funds to the offshore account," Cynthia said, her voice tinged with excitement. "Perfect," Jake replied, grinning. "By the time he figures it out, we'll be long gone." "You really think this will work?" she asked, a rare note of hesitation in her tone. Jake chuckled, leaning forward to take her hands in his. "Cynthia, trust me. We've planned this for months. He'll never see it coming." They shared a laugh, a sound so casual it made my stomach turn. I clenched my fists, my nails biting into my palms. The temptation to burst through the door and confront them on the spot was overwhelming, but I forced myself to stay calm. This wasn't the moment. Not yet. As I continued watching, the scene took a more painful turn. Jake leaned in closer to Cynthia, his hand brushing her cheek. "You know, I hate that we have to keep this a secret," he murmured. She smiled, resting her forehead against his. "Just a little longer," she whispered. Then they kissed. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. They kissed deeply, as if I didn't exist, as if the life Cynthia and I had built together was nothing more than a shadow. The kiss grew more passionate, and soon they were tangled together on the couch. Cynthia broke away, laughing softly. "Not here," she said, taking Jake's hand. "Let's go to the bedroom." Jake grinned, following her down the hallway that led to our bedroom. I moved quickly, sneaking around to a different window with a view of the bedroom. My hands shook as I positioned the small camera I'd brought with me, ensuring it captured every detail. The blinds were partially open, and though I hated myself for watching, I forced myself to record it all. Inside, they were oblivious. Clothes came off, and the intimacy that should have been mine was flaunted in front of me like a sick game. I clenched my jaw, swallowing the rage that threatened to boil over. When it was over, they lay tangled in each other's arms, whispering and laughing like they had all the time in the world. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the recording saving automatically to a secure drive. This was the proof I needed, not just of their affair, but of the depth of their betrayal. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of my revenge. The next week, I hosted a party at our home under the pretense of celebrating a major business milestone. My company had recently signed a lucrative contract, a deal I managed to secure after weeks of painstakingly undoing the damage caused by Cynthia and Jake's schemes. It was the perfect excuse to gather our closest friends, family, and colleagues, the people who mattered most to us, and Cynthia leapt at the chance to host. She loved being the center of attention, dazzling everyone with her charm and hospitality. As the house filled with laughter and clinking glasses, Cynthia was in her element, flitting effortlessly from group to group with her bright smile and easy banter. When Jake arrived late, his smug grin as he greeted me made my blood boil, but I maintained my composure. Little did either of them know, this wasn't just a celebration, it was the stage for the reckoning. "Hey man," Jake said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Hope I'm not too late." "Not at all," I replied coolly. "Glad you could make it." As the night progressed, the air grew thick with tension. The party carried on, laughter, chatter, clinking glasses, but beneath it all, a simmering storm was brewing. I watched as Cynthia, unaware of what was to come, floated around the room, accepting compliments and doling out flirtations, playing her part as the perfect hostess. Jake was by her side for much of the night, his presence like a constant reminder of the betrayal that had been eating away at me for months. At a certain point, I felt my anger surge again, like a tidal wave ready to break. I couldn't stand another second of pretending. I couldn't stomach the sight of Jake's smug face or the way Cynthia had so easily slipped into this game of deception. I looked over at the crowd, our closest friends and family, all of them unknowingly complicit in the lies I'd been living. It was time to expose everything. I signaled to the DJ to stop the music. A few seconds later, the room fell into an uneasy silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice calm yet carrying a sharp edge, "thank you all for being here tonight. We're here to celebrate a milestone in my business, and I appreciate the support everyone has shown me over the years. But tonight I also have something important to share with all of you." Cynthia's smile faltered slightly, but she quickly masked it with a forced laugh. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice high-pitched, attempting to seem oblivious. I turned to Jake, who had drifted to the bar, feigning casualness as he sipped his drink. He made no effort to hide the way his eyes lingered on Cynthia from a distance, his gaze betraying more than he probably intended. The rage simmered within me, but I forced myself to keep my voice steady. "I've spent weeks uncovering the truth," I continued, my eyes sweeping over the room. "The people you trust the most. Sometimes they're the ones who stab you in the back." I nodded to the screen behind me. With the press of a button, the video footage began to play. At first there was confusion, people shifting uncomfortably, murmuring to each other. But as the footage showed Cynthia and Jake laughing in the hotel lobby, entering a room together, and then the incriminating clips from our home, Cynthia and Jake in my living room plotting to ruin me, gasps erupted throughout the room. The air was electric with shock and disbelief. I saw Cynthia's face drain of color as she stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. Jake, on the other hand, stood frozen, his drink falling from his hand and crashing to the floor. "You," Cynthia whispered, but I didn't give her the chance to finish. "Don't even try to explain," I spat. "I've known for weeks. The affair, the lies, the plans to bankrupt me so you could take everything I've worked for and run away together. But it won't work. Not anymore." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the projector and the soft clinking of glasses as they were slowly set down by stunned guests. Jake stepped forward, his face red with anger. "You're out of your mind. This is insane," he yelled, voice shaking. "This is a setup." "You think I didn't know?" I replied, my voice a low growl. "I've been watching. I've been listening. You thought you could steal my life, my business, and my wife, and get away with it?" In a blind flash of fury, I lunged toward Jake. I didn't even think about it. My hand caught his collar, pulling him toward me. He was caught off guard, stumbling back, trying to break free. A scuffle ensued, my fists landing hard against his chest. He fought back, swinging wildly, but I was relentless. The rage I'd been holding in for so long was finally breaking free. "Stop! Stop!" Cynthia screamed, but her voice barely registered in my ears. All I could hear was the sound of my own breath, ragged and furious. The sound of the commotion must have drawn attention, because suddenly, the door flew open, and 2 uniformed police officers rushed inside. "What's going on here?" one of the officers barked, his hand on his holster. I froze, still panting, my hand gripping Jake's shirt. The officers had clearly been responding to something. Perhaps a neighbor had called, disturbed by the loud music and then the commotion. The house was nestled in a quiet neighborhood, and noise in these parts didn't go unnoticed for long. Before I could respond, Cynthia spoke up. "He's gone mad. He attacked Jake. He's ruining everything." Her voice was high-pitched, frantic. Jake, stumbling from the fight, seemed to regain his composure, though his face was pale and his shirt was torn. "He's the one who's crazy. I've been ambushed." The officers quickly stepped in, separating us and taking control of the situation. "You're both under arrest for assault," one of them declared, his voice steady and cold. "You'll have a chance to explain yourselves down at the station." Cynthia's protests were futile as the officers handcuffed me and Jake. In the chaos, the guests, friends, family, were stunned. No one knew exactly what to say. The atmosphere shifted from one of celebration to one of disbelief and shock. What had seemed like an innocent party had turned into a nightmare, and the betrayal was laid bare for everyone to see. As I was led out the door, I caught a glimpse of Cynthia, her face now streaked with tears. But there was no sympathy in my chest, no remorse. She had made her choice, and now she would face the consequences. At the station, things played out in a blur. I was booked for assault, but in the end, the truth of what had happened came to light. The recordings, the video footage, and the investigation into the financial sabotage left no room for denial. The police were able to verify everything, and both Cynthia and Jake were charged with conspiracy, embezzlement, and fraud. Within a matter of days, everything unraveled. The affair was exposed to the public, and Cynthia's social standing crumbled. The media didn't let up, covering every sordid detail of the plot that had been uncovered. Jake's career was ruined, and his reputation in tatters. As for me, I walked away with my dignity and my business intact. The divorce proceedings were swift, and I was granted full control of everything I'd worked for. Jake and Cynthia, on the other hand, quickly saw their lives fall apart. With the evidence exposed, their relationship crumbled under public scrutiny. Friends and family turned away, their careers were ruined, and their reputations were irreparably damaged. The company they had stolen from, my company, pressed charges, and both were soon facing criminal charges for conspiracy, embezzlement, and fraud. After a lengthy investigation, they were found guilty and sentenced to prison. When they got out of prison, they clung to each other, trying to salvage what was left of their relationship. But the cracks in their bond deepened with each passing day, fueled by guilt, betrayal, and the weight of their actions. The emotional toll of everything they had lost proved too much to bear, and in the end, they couldn't outrun the damage they had done. Not just to me, but to themselves, and they finally broke up. The party had been the beginning of my revenge, but it was the final confrontation, when the world knew what they had done, that left the deepest scar. They had thought they could take everything from me, everything I'd built, everything I held dear. But in the end, it wasn't the money, the reputation, or the betrayal that hurt the most. It was the fact that they had stolen something I couldn't get back, the trust I once had in them. But eventually, justice was served, and they both paid the price for what they had done. Thank you for watching.